Tiger, thanks for inviting me canoeing.
No problem.
It's so cool that we get to paddle on this lake.
Yeah, did you know it also generates electricity?
No way!
Yes way. Here, let's ask the governor about it. Hey Siri, call the governor.
Calling the governor of Vermont.
Well, I see the climate change is real, and all we have to do is look at some of the news reports over the last 6 months and seeing the devastating storms that we've seen across the southern parts of our country, devastation in Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands, and to determine that it's real for us, and we have a part to play. And when you think about it, I think about it in simple terms. I think about it trying to explain it to people that don't believe, and I say, if you had a vehicle that was run by fuel, and you put it into a garage and you closed all the doors and started it up, bad things will happen. And it's the same thing with our atmosphere, with the world. We do play a part in this, and we should do everything we can to try and solve that problem. We can see how in our lifetime everything has changed with us. You look back over the last 10 to 20 years and see the incredible changes made in our lives, and this is gaining momentum. When Elon Musk talks about being all electric vehicles within 20 years. In 20 years, that's all you'll see, and you'll see history in the museums with some of the gasoline engines and so forth. Some of the things we see at the fair today, the steam engines and so forth. You'll be seeing some of those 8-cylinder motors being shown there as something that was in a lifetime ago. Everything that we're doing over the last decade or two has been around trying to do whatever we can to be self-reliant, to be responsible with energy. A lot of that is surrounded by conservation, something that we're doing quite well, I believe, in Vermont. Premier Couillard has set forth an initiative. He wants to have 100,000 vehicles be electric sold in Quebec in the next year or two. So that provides for opportunity for us because we count on them for trade, we count on them for tourism, and it's also, we're a conduit between them and some of the bigger metropolitan areas like Boston. So we need to do what we can to accommodate them. I look back at Irene and I think about what we went through, and Governor Shumlin was instrumental in the recovery. I was lieutenant governor at the time, and so I would go to different parts of the state where he couldn't make at that point. So I remember going to one of my first stops was in Brandon, and Route 7 was closed down, and I went to the center of Brandon to find out why and what we could do to help. And there was the pizza house was sitting in the middle of Route 7, moved off its foundation, and so all the traffic had to be routed around on gravel roads. I made a couple of calls. I was in the construction industry. We got a crane there the very next day, just picked it up, moved it off from Route 7, and traffic was flowing again. If we don't take care of ourselves, if we don't work together, we're not going to accomplish the goals that we've set forth. 90% renewables by 2050 is what we believe we can attain, which is why we signed on to a number of initiatives. The Climate Action Commission is something that I put forth by executive order. We want to hear back from the leaders in those sectors about what we can do in Vermont to attain those goals, as well as the Vermont Climate Pledge that we made with Mayor Weinberger, and we are working together with municipalities and businesses to do what we can together. And as again, which was an unfortunate, I think, development when the United States, the administration decided to pull out of the Paris Climate Agreement. We stepped up as a state. We signed on with 14 states plus Puerto Rico with the U.S. Climate Alliance to prove that we're going to move forward, whether we as the United States do with one sector, we are doing individually as governors. And I believe that the power is within the states, and we can attain the Paris Climate Agreement as well individually amongst the states. Just that first step produces, I think, the innovation that we're known for in this country, and it's something that I believe that is attainable. But we're going to have to work together and accept the fact that that what we're doing is going to be challenging.
This light's taking forever.
Yeah, too many cars.
Wish we could get rid of cars. Hey, let's call the mayor.
Great idea. Hey Siri, call the mayor of Montpelier.
Calling the mayor of Montpelier.
One of my things that I really care a lot about is making this city a better place to bike. So I think I would put bike lanes everywhere. And so anybody who wanted to get on a bike could do it and be safe. In 2014, a group of citizens came to me with this idea that we become a net zero city, meaning that we get all of our energy through either renewable resources or through, if we need to, by purchasing renewable assets outside of Montpelier as sort of a fallback. And it was immediately appealing to me. It's been a concern. Climate change has been a concern with me for 25 years. And I knew that this is something that could resonate with the citizens of Montpelier. We partnered with a utility company, with some environmental groups, and then have a very dynamic advisory committee of citizens here in Montpelier to help us implement it. So you put a target out too far, 90% by 2050, it becomes somebody else's problem. If it's in the next decade we have to do this, 14 years, that's my problem, and we need to take steps now to get there. So I think it creates more of a sense of urgency to make change than we might otherwise have if we set a target that's further out. I think on the municipal side, the progress is good. Our greenhouse gas emissions in Montpelier are down 56% since 2011, which is, I think, a very noteworthy change as a result of some significant city investments. Our overall energy usage is down by 14%. So we've made real progress. The big challenge, of course, is going to be changing residential commercial uses, and that's going to be a more difficult challenge. What we need to do are the things that are going to make it easier for people, for example, to convert cars to electric uses. Almost a third of our greenhouse gas emissions are from transportation sector. So we need to move our cars off of fossil fuels onto electric vehicles, but have the infrastructure so that people can plug in so that it's a viable option. And it's really, it sort of is now, but you have to stretch, and we want to make it, it needs to be something that is accessible to everyone. With this Energy Advisory Committee, we have made a number of changes that are going to reduce our energy cost. We, as the City Council, have taken some of that money and have created a revolving fund that then could be used for more investments in alternative technology or renewable resources. So that's ensure that we continue to put money. And of course, in a small town with limited resources, that's part of our challenge, is having the money in order to make these investments. But we have done that, and I'll just mention a couple. One is the creation of a new renewably fired district heat plant that heats most of our downtown, including this building, 18 other buildings, including a lot of state office buildings, with renewably sourced wood from around the region. And that has had a significant impact in reducing our carbon output. Have a significant investment in our wastewater treatment plant that's also going to have a significant reduction in the carbon output there, just by making it more efficient and reducing the amount of methane discharges from that plant. One of the ways that I think we can reach a net zero goal is by making this community more bikeable and walkable, getting people out of cars and making this a community that is easier to get around in alternative transportation. One of the things we've done is taken a portion of our parking revenue. We've got 5% of our parking revenue that's dedicated towards alternative transportation. So we take that money, it's about $50,000 a year. Not a lot of money in most cities, enough to make a difference here in this small town. And we put that into bike lanes, into new sidewalks, making it easier for people to get around in ways other than cars. We have in Montpelier a very successful bus system that allows people to get around town, and it's free at no cost. And it's funded through a partnership with the city as well as the regional transit agency. And it's, I think, unique for a city our size to have this alternative transportation available. As a result of the federal government's withdrawal from the Paris Climate Accords, Vermont has created the Climate Pledge Coalition, which consists of the governor, mayors like myself, private sector throughout the state, all working to create specific policies that we can implement to take the place of those changes that we seem to not be, or the commitments that we're backing away from at the federal level. I am an optimist. I think, you know what, I guess I'd say I'm tenacious. I'm not going to give up. We have too much at stake and we have too much opportunity. So I think we can do this, and we have to.
You know, Ani, we're lucky our local leaders are working so hard to keep our air and water clean.
Yeah, and climate-proof our future too, right?
Totally. I wonder if the business climate in other cities is changing as well.
Let's find out. Let's call the mayor of Burlington.
Great idea. Hey Siri, call the mayor of Burlington.
Calling the mayor of Bellington.
Burlington achieved a pretty remarkable milestone in 2014. We now source 100% of our electricity from renewable generation. When we achieved that milestone, there was an incredible reaction really from around the world, and it caused us to think hard about where we go next. We realized that this had been a big success. It had been a success both in terms of meeting our values, our environmental goals as a community, but it also had strengthened our utility from an economic perspective, a financial perspective. And so we kind of went through a process of thinking big about the future and came out of that with the goal of becoming a net zero city across not just electricity, but also thermal and ground transportation sectors. And that is now the goal that we're working towards, and we think we could hit over the next 10 to 15 years. You know, Burlington has an interesting story that goes back decades, and that I think does offer some models for other cities and to think about. We, for a long time, have had a very active electricity conservation effort within the city, led by our electric utility. And as a result, Burlington today consumes less electricity as a city collectively than we did in 1989, despite all of, which has not been the story for the rest of the state or the rest of the country. That, I think, really does show the power of these incremental, granular interventions at the household level and how over time they can build and really become something quite powerful. When I came into office 5 years ago, there were only 25 solar installations in the city. We're now up over 160, and we recently launched a solar shopper program that makes it very easy for Burlington Electric customers to go out to the market and get competing bids for putting solar panels on their homes. We do have a number of many initiatives going on in this space now, being led by our Burlington Electric Department, which is a city-owned municipality a city-owned electric utility that has been part of the city for over 100 years. And here are a few of the big goals that we're working on. We are deep into the effort to create a district energy system. This is, we have a biofuel plant that is actually within city limits and that generates electricity by burning sustainably harvested wood chips. We are hoping, and it's long been a hope, but we now think we actually may have a way of doing it, to use the waste heat, the considerable amounts of waste heat that comes from that project, from that plant, and use that waste heat to heat the downtown and our institutions up at the top of the hill, in particular the major hospital that we have up at basically the top of the hill behind me here. And we have been working with a private partner for about a year on this, and if we are able to succeed at this, and there's still some question marks, it will in one step reduce our carbon footprint by about 20% overall in terms of the whole city's consumption. So that's one big initiative going on. We do think that to make the area we've been most challenged for years in terms of making progress with bringing down emissions has been in the ground transportation sector. We have seen vehicle miles traveled per capita continue to rise. We don't have great, we do our best with public transportation, but we're not terribly densely populated area. It makes it difficult for mass transit to work effectively. The initiative that we're excited about is transitioning our fleet from a gasoline-burning vehicle fleet to a electric vehicle fleet. And we are starting to take the first steps with that. We've had a local subsidy from the utility, a local incentive this summer, and we've seen an enormous response to that. And we are starting, we believe in the years to come we could see a very substantial percentage of the number of automobiles owned here in Burlington transition over to being electric vehicles. When you marry electric vehicles with renewable generation, that's quite a powerful combination, I think, in terms of making real transformative change. One element of that is we're trying to make sure these opportunities are available not just to the wealthy members of the community. We are looking for ways to make sure that electric vehicles are accessible to low and moderate income families and households. So that was one of the things. We've got a new incentive around specifically for low and moderate households that we've just announced in the last couple of weeks. It was a terribly disappointing thing to see President Trump walk away from the U.S.'s really historic role of being a leader in environmental policy. There's no doubt that ultimately to do what needs to be done, you need national and international action, and it's a huge setback to see the U.S. stepping away from the Paris Agreement. At the same time, I guess one silver lining in the president's decision is that I think it has accelerated something that was already going on out there. A lot of leadership and innovation with respect to transitioning society away from fossil fuels is happening it's happening at the municipal level because it's going to require local changes to really get there in a lot of respects. It is, like what we've been discussing, it's going to require people using different types of vehicles. It's going to involve probably different land use patterns. So cities have a major role to play in this transition. And the fact that there is no leadership now coming from the federal level, I think just has made it clear to many of us serving in local office that we really are going to need to step up if the years ahead are going to continue to move us in the right direction. One thing that I'm excited about is we are trying to, much like we're seeing cities and states step up in other parts of the country, we have our own kind of Vermont version of that. We have launched something called the Vermont Climate Change Coalition, something that my office and the governor are doing together, where we are really trying to encourage municipalities, businesses, other organizations to make climate plans, to revise climate plans if they already have them, and think hard about what they are going to do as organizations to move towards the goals laid out in the Paris Climate Agreement.